Did you hear that?
Yeah, I did.
Right. Here we go.
Got it.
Oh, I was just gonna say that I think I know Jordan from like pre-high school. You know, he was in the same circle as some of my really close friends. He was good friends with them, and so, you know, we eventually got into that same circle. And then many years later, I found out that he was fully into the whole Panic world, and that was just kind of a, oh man, had I only known this in high school or college, you know. But yeah, it's pretty wild.
For sure. That was around the time that Lisa and I met in 97.
97.
We lived together. Yeah, we lived together in Breckenridge before, you know, I ski bummed for a year before going to law school. And then we kept in touch. And yeah, I remember being in law school on the computer. Should have been studying law, but I was on Panic's website instead, which is probably why I wasn't at the top of my class. But then I saw I think the bottom of the screen, website designed by, I don't remember what it said. It was like TUW, but it had your name on there somewhere. I remember sending you an email. I'm like, is this Brian Sofer from Dix Hills? And then yeah, same thing. Was pleasantly surprised to learn that you were way into Panic and their webmaster. And I remember knowing back in the day that you were like one of the few kids in Dix Hills that was into the Grateful Dead, but it was cool to see it morph into Widespread. And yeah,
Right,
that's around the time where Lisa and I and our group of friends started seeing a lot of Panic shows together.
Yeah, that was that. That's where it all happened.
And that was West Coast at this point, 97 or no?
Well,
My first Panic show was in Colorado. It was at Aspen Buttermilk.
Which one?
99 Harmony Fest. So I'd been listening, you know, I'd heard of Panic, and then I moved in with Jordan, and you know, loved music and loved going to shows. And so I listened to Panic for a good couple of years before I ever saw them. So by the time I saw them, I had I'd listened to all the albums pretty much, and was just like, here I am. I think that's part of the reason why when it all came crashing down, you know, it was like, but I just got here. But it was just happening. I did the Colorado shows, and then it was like shows that were in Colorado, right? So like there's Red Rocks, and they always had those end of summer shows. And then we didn't get tickets to Red Rocks because, you know, you called back in the day when you were calling Ticketmaster. And Sarah was like, well, they're playing down in Santa Fe at this place, Paolo Soleri. And so we went to that. We got tickets to that. And that changed the tide in a major way. And from there on, it was like, where should we go now? And that fall, we did the Greek, and we did Halloween, and we saw them in Boston, and we saw them, you know, we saw a lot of shows. And then it was Oak Mountain, and then it was like, shit, Mikey's sick. And that was that.
Yeah, that was tough for sure. It's so interesting. Like, I think like right at the time, you know, where I got like way into Panic, it was at the same time, like my interest or like the end of the line was coming for the Dead.
Uh-huh.
And there was such this feeling like, because I got on the Dead thing so late in their tenure, you know, like I was like, I would really like to be on, you know, whatever ground floor this is. And it feels like something. And like shortly after in 90, I think it was 97, early 97. Right. So I went to the Fox shows, New Year's 96. And then I was like, I am definitely moving to Georgia, just to see, because I felt like it was going to be like San Francisco, like like with it, like it wasn't really like that, but it to me at the time it was like it's going to be like that. So
Yeah.
that's why. So I wanted to get down there and just kind of like be nearby, and it was like a drag being up north because I remember it was not convenient, quite honestly, to see maybe more than one or two shows in the Northeast, in the mid
Yeah.
early 90s, like 93, 94. They would play like New York City. That was great. But then maybe that was it. And like you would have to drive a good ways. And it wasn't like on Dead Tour where there were always people driving long ways and there were a lot of people on the tour with you. It wasn't like that. And then it was like, okay, if you're gonna go to Ohio, you're going by yourself. enjoy the drive, and like whatever happens, hopefully it works out. But anyway, yeah. So I don't know.
You moved to Georgia primarily to catch more shows.
Well, yeah. So like, that's sort of true. And I was doing a lot of like fan sites at the time. And I was like, I'd like to be nearby because I would like to find a way to work, with this band in some way online. That was like my thing at the time.
Okay.
And then also to do more shows, and I was doing websites so I could it was easy at the time I was lucky to be able to just zip down to Georgia. Yeah.
How did you
Brian, something's going on with you where every once in a while you just cut out. Are you hearing that, Jordan?
I'm not.
Maybe it's just me.
No.
I'm hearing a little audio cutouts on Lisa, actually.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm getting a little bit of that. So we are in Oregon, Colorado, and South Carolina. Brian, what was your remind us what your first Panic show was?
It was on Long Island, I guess. It was at Jones Beach. It was Horde 92.
Oh, that's right.
And at the time I was really green, but I knew who Panic was for sure. And I was familiar with Wrangler from like literally the hallway in the dorm. And one of my friends was like, you should hear this. They're really like, one of the Deadhead kids is like, you should. And we were all, that was so cool at that time too, because we were all like searching for this new, there wasn't this jam band scene that, it was the Grateful Dead. And like, so everyone was kind of looking for these new types of, jam bands that were, and so like, there was this thirst for it. And so I remember Steve, he was like, you should listen to this band. And he played me like the cassette of Wrangler. And then, it was in fall 91. And then I remember the Horde, we were talking about the Horde really excitedly in spring, because it was coming this summer. We're like, which are you going to do? And I was like, oh, Jones Beach. Awesome. And so, that's where I saw him. And it was the first time I got a taste of like the Colonel and all that shit, but I was so young and I was like entranced by Panic, no doubt. And they were playing in the middle of the day. Like, it felt like morning, it was just ridiculous. Like 17 people in that place. And it was so fucking loud, it was booming. And I was like, oh, like, because I had only heard Wrangler and I didn't realize, I'm like, this is kind of like a heavy metal band, kind of in a lot of ways, like they're just so whatever. So and that was, and I was like, nice, but not like full, like I was digging them, no doubt. And I was like, this is special, but I was so like immersed and invested in Grateful Dead. So I had to pursue that for a little longer.
Yeah.
You had seen a bunch of Dead shows at that. Your first Dead show was, you caught Brent, right?
Yeah, I got to see like 89, fall 89, or Foxborough 89. And then, but I didn't know that was like, I was just a kid, just like literally a kid who snuck out of like camp and went to Foxborough Stadium with some like older kid. It was like
offense defense tennis camp.
No, it was another summer program. But like, I like the Grateful Dead, but I was in no way prepared to like go to a summer stadium kind of. It was just kind of wild. So, and it, like looking back, 6 set list, it's an amazing set list. It's 7-2-89 Foxborough. But the first real show I thought was for me was like, because it was my real friends from Long Island that I got to go with, like Peter and Lyle and Brad, and we went to 10-14-89 at Brendan Byrne, which was also, it was the first venue. Okay, the first tape I got was from Peter's older brother from that venue for 787 Brendan Byrne, and they opened both shows 10-14-89 and 4-7-87 with Touch Mingle, and like it was just kind of all right. I was like, this is really cool. And so I got to, but I only saw like, and then I was still young, it was 89, 90, and I saw maybe 2 or 3 Brent shows, and then by summer 90 he was gone.
Yeah.
So, cool. You got to see him.
He's awesome. He's sick. He's like, and that's the thing is like, even you can look back at those clips now and like see it, but when and I remember like being live, like seeing him live and like moving, because again, I only listened to them on tapes. There wasn't a lot of streaming. There was no fucking YouTube with clips of the Dead everywhere. So like you never really saw them except there. And then you're seeing Brent and like a big spotlight on him, and it all became really real. And like he was completely, just possessed. It was awesome. It was really awesome. And no matter what he was singing, it was always like 150%, just like, and we learned later probably a lot of reasons why he was that intense, but he definitely brought the heat.
Absolutely. Lisa, what was your first concert ever?
My first concert ever was New Order with PIL and the Sugar Cubes. If you know who those bands are.
Bjork.
So I saw Bjork. I saw Bjork and I saw Johnny Rotten at my first concert.
Wow. Where was this?
It was at Irvine Meadows, which is, I think now like condos, but it's in Southern California, Irvine Meadows. And it was good. My friend and I, we got there early. We were really into seeing the music, and we were right on the rail of the lawn, and we were like 15, like I would think I was probably even like 14, and we had to defend our spot from these like older kind of collegey guys behind us who were kind of like spilling beer on us and grabbing our butts, but we weren't moving. We were like, no, this is our spot. We are not moving from this rail right here, because we got there super early and we're just like, this is our jam. But the next concert I saw was Love and Rockets at the same venue. And that was the show where I was like, realized that live music could transform you to another place, could like take you to another place. I wasn't like a big dancer, I didn't like go out dancing. Like I had friends who loved to go out dancing. And if it was the right circumstances, I would get out and get there with them, but a lot of times I felt self-conscious or I wasn't up in the mix. But at that show, I really figured out, I just felt something different, that seeing live music could make you be in a different place and be almost a different person. Like while it's happening, you're just not thinking about anything else. You can't think about anything else while it's going on. And that was, I remember my friend even being like, wow, you really got into that. I was like, yeah, I guess I did. And it was kind of a half like insult, how I think people still are that way. Like, people still are like, what? You've seen the same band how many times? And they kind of like give you the side eye and like make a joke. And you're like, you clearly don't get it. And that's okay.
Absolutely. For sure. So how do you remember the venue at all? Irvine Meadows?
Oh yeah, I do. I don't know if I honestly think they tore it down. It turned into like the Verizon Amphitheater or something. and then I think it might be gone.
Yeah.
And it was rad. It was super good. I saw a bunch of shows there. I saw Rush at the Irvine Meadows. I saw Steve Miller Band. The Dead played there a lot, but I never saw them because I was stupid. But yeah, I saw a bunch of shows at Irvine Meadows, and it was a great venue. It's an outdoor amphitheater, big lawn, great lot. It was awesome.
Nice.
How about
Yeah,
you,
I'll
JB?
have to look and see
was
if we
your
can
first,
review it. I did think.
show? I'm sorry.
What was the question, Brian?
Your first
show?
your first show.
Yeah, my first concert was Squeeze at
Squeeze.
Madison Square
shit.
Garden. It's crazy. They were huge. This was 7th grade, and it was part of their Cozy Van Tutti Frutti tour. And I went with Billy Scheel, my next door neighbor. His mom Isabel took us to Madison Square Garden, and yeah, just kind of like what you were saying, Lisa. It was just the total shift in energy, just being in Madison Square Garden with all, which is arguably, or not even arguably, is one of the greatest music venues in the world, and just being around all those people in that venue was life changing. I mean, just like everything is, but and yeah, it's crazy. I mean, Squeeze, those guys are like, right, they're still playing. I think they're playing like probably casinos and venues like that now, but it's pretty amazing. They were
love
headlining
Squeeze.
Yeah, they've got some real classics that just kind of stick in your head, like pulling muscles from a shell. But anyway, that was my first concert experience. I do remember the second.
Did they sell out the Garden?
I think they did. I don't remember, and I don't know that I necessarily would have known. I think that at that point, I think our parents were probably still getting tickets for us, but
yeah,
it was definitely pretty darn full as far as I can remember. But then second concert, like when Brian was talking about Jones Beach, where you saw the Horde, I saw Elvis Costello there. I think a few months later with my parents and some friends. That was a pretty sweet concert too. My aunt got me into Elvis Costello. Around that time. Jones Beach is one of those venues.
Yeah, Jones
for
Beach
me,
is a awesome place.
Yeah, it's like super cool, right on the water. I don't know if you've ever seen photos of Jones Beach, Lisa, or been there, but it's right on the ocean.
I've been to Jones Beach. I took a drive once down to Jones Beach, but I don't know anything about the venue. Is it still standing?
It's still standing. I saw Panic there about 7 years ago, and it's one of those venues where it like on paper and like the photos you see are amazing. There's definitely some things about it that are less than ideal. Like talking about security is it's just not the friendliest venue. Like the concessions there are not very good. The sound, it's on the water, so sometimes the sound can get taken away. Like the seats are, I don't know, I just remember it kind of seeming a little run down. Actually, I saw some good concerts there. I saw Neil Young with Blind Melon there back in the day.
Ooh,
saw Bob Dylan in 9th grade. So they definitely get some good bands. I just remember always having this feeling at Jones Beach where like, this doesn't feel as cool as the venue seems or should be. Some venues just are like that. They seem like they would just be this amazing experience, but then when you go and do experience it, there's some things that are just don't live up to the hype for whatever reason. I don't know if you guys.
Jones Beach reminded me, well, hearing about Jones Beach, I'm reminded of this. I went to this amphitheater in 97 in Tulsa. It was for Panic. It was like the shows right before. I'm just looking at re-listen right now to just see where it was in the tour. It was 6/22/97, which was the show before, 2 nights prior to Paolo Soleri 97, and then 2 nights, then Red Rocks after that. So we were going to this Tulsa Riverpark Amphitheater to check it out. It was really a quiet kind of one of those sleeper shows. It was just, there weren't a lot of people who were there who were then going to Santa Fe and then going to Red Rocks. It wasn't like that. It was just maybe a bunch of kids from Texas were there and some other folks who were, doing whatever. But
Yeah.
So it was kind of cool. And so we get there and it's really chill and we're just hanging out on the lawn and we kind of see it. It's like one of those theaters, like, it's literally the stage is on the water, right? But I don't know what we were thinking exactly in terms of how the band was going to enter the stage. I had thought they were going to come from behind somewhere or under, like, I didn't know, but everyone's now in their spot ready for the show. Like the lights didn't go out because it's outdoors, but it's that, the show's about to start. Everyone's ready.
Yeah.
And then you actually see the band being led by security, having to walk down. It's almost like a pro wrestling thing. They were walking through the arena down, this small little amphitheater, but still a couple thousand people. And the whole place was like, it was so cool. It's like this triumphant entrance onto the stage.
Wow.
And they immediately start playing. It was definitely one of the coolest things, I think, and one of the more memorable, absolutely one of the more memorable entrances. And they've already had some real memorable entrances because Gary, that fucking intro is one of the coolest things I think that the jam band scene has ever had. Like, I can't recall, like, there's some Dead shows where Bill Graham's doing "Ladies and Gentlemen, the Grateful Dead" or whatever, but like,
yeah,
Gary,
yeah,
like, he gets you pumped. And so it was one of those other kinds of things that I was just like, this is such a cool thing for this band to have to enter like that. It was just, anyway, yeah, Riverpark
cool.
Amphitheater.
That's so
Dave
cool.
Schools like picturing schools in like a boxing robe, like
maybe like a cape,
punch in the air.
Yeah.
That's funny because I remember Paolo Soleri. So it wasn't, so we saw Paolo Soleri 2001. And then the next time they played, it was 2003, I think. And Mikey was gone and George was playing. And they had this crazy thing. I got in line. I remember getting in line crazy early and Jordan made fun of me. But we had really, really close seats and we were in the venue very, very early. And they had this like hallway, outdoor like hallway thing. The Paolo Soleri is such an interesting venue and it's designed by an architect. It's really meant to be this creative space. And you could see the band like loading in and the band walking down this ramp kind of before the show even started. And I remember when George walked down the ramp, there was a huge cheering and applause and everyone clapping for him. And this was still at the time where people were just really grateful to him for being there at all, because I think we knew if he wasn't there, where would we be? What would we be doing? And that tide turned a little, but it was a really cool moment. And it was cool to be able to see them coming in because usually that's all backstage and it's so hidden and you don't get to have that view of the band.
Yeah, that venue was so organic is the word that comes to mind. And I think it was the shows in 2001 where the dog just ran on stage.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was like in the middle of, wasn't like in the middle of C Brown, but I think at some point during the show, I remember.
Oh yeah, I don't think they played C Brown that night. I don't remember C Brown from that show.
No, joking about that, but that would be funny. Panic should do that every time they play C Brown. Just have like a little puppy run
Bring a
on
dog.
stage.
Yep, team dog.
Baby, just cuddle up with it. Brian, you went to Paolo Soleri too. You were there. Were you there in the 90s?
Yeah,
was it?
97 was the only time I went. And it was it was definitely memorable. The whole thing, like we got there pretty early. I was traveling with one other guy. And yeah, we got there early in the afternoon. It was really kind of chill. I remember driving down, I think it was Cerritos Boulevard or something, which is one of the main arteries of Santa Fe. You know, it just goes and I think that's what it's called. And then it was just so funny because I remember, you know, again, no internet, no way to check out. It was, you know, on the satellite where it's, you know, and so all of a sudden we see this little sign. It's like, you know, Paolo Soleri Amphitheater, whatever, you know, it says with some like blue, you know, touristy kind of sign. And like, it just left. And like, you just take a left and there it is. It's like, you drove right through it. And then I remember like the parking lot was just very like dirt. And they had like what looked like fences, like you'd see it at
it was
maybe
a school. It was like a deaf school.
Right. So it has that whole vibe. And like, because the theater itself to me reminded me of like one of those camp amphitheaters, like at a summer day camp or something. It was a little bigger, obviously, but it was that kind of, not much, but it was that vibe. And like, it was really good. And like, even at the shows, like I always usually just always broke and always did shows solo. Usually, even if I went with people, I'd be like, all right, see it drums or see it set break, you know, I just like doing that. And so, and I like to, I don't know, I like to usually kind of just be on the outside. So many times I'm outside of the venue and the gates a lot, not like, you know, throwing down hard necessarily, but sometimes, but mostly to just kind of just like, I don't know, like just kind of chill out and just watch the whole thing unfold. I just kind of dig that, you know? And so I remember being at Paolo Soleri like during vacation or something, like it was during, it's like machine bar stools, right? Machine bar stools ain't no use vacation. And like people were completely, it was a tribal thing happening. It was just completely not, you know, it was something that I hadn't really experienced at the Panic shows at that level. Like it was just completely, I don't know, like everybody was almost just, I don't know, it was a weird kind of one of those things where everyone was just in unison, like this kind of it was really cool. And like, you know, would that have happened at Phillips? Probably not, you know. You know, so like it's just, so I'm always, I think it's funny because now when I think of some of these stories, I do think of them in a different POV now that, you know, the Venue Llama project is here. And it's like, the venues make such an impact in the whole experience because it just kind of, it's, you could, the people act differently, the people from the region might be different, you know, and all of these different elements kind of come together in this one meeting place, the venue, you know. And so I don't know, I just see that more and more, you know.
I hear what you're saying. I feel like for me it's like, like you're saying, when you're younger you experience that and you feel it and it has these different effects on you. Like the older that I've gotten, I've just kind of just thought about it more and have broken it down in my mind and like thinking about like why I do feel different in different venues or where I did back in the day. And, you know, looking back at a place like Paolo Soleri, it just seems like there was definitely just a lot of intention. I mean, like Lisa, you were saying, Paolo Soleri, he is this famous architect and just put all this thought into the venue. And I remember the seats, just even how the seats, you kind of feel like you're like looking down on the stage, and just how the stand just kind of envelop the stage, and like the stage is on the same level like as the first row of the seats. So you just kind of had this, there was this feeling there of connectedness. I think that there just was a lot of forethought into that. And that's, you know, just getting like why we love these bands. There's already that feeling of just being part of it and just having an influence on the show, and especially venues like that where it just felt to me that there was just like no barrier between the band and the fans. It was like this one big, like aspen tree kind of thing.
No, agreed. My first time there, I remember we were in like row 3, and I can remember being so close to the band that it was almost uncomfortable. Like the eye contact you could make with like Schools and JB, we were right between Schools and JB. It was almost so intimate. It was like, I have to look away. This is, it was weird. It was crazy.
Yeah. You're just in there, and you feel like you have to, you just have to go full tilt and just do your part to keep that energy going. I remember feeling the same way, like, whoa, I need to kind of step back here for a little bit. But
and this is when Schools always had the little like Godzilla guys on his stack, and someone in the crowd had brought this big blow up Godzilla, and it just like the crowd like moved it, and then they just set it right there because again, you're right there on the stage. You could just walk up and like high five Schools, you know, and they just set it right next to Schools, so it was right next to his stack with all his little guys. And I remember him just giving JB this look like, this is crazy, this is ridiculous, you know, and smiling. And like I feel like I could have reached out and like grabbed JB if I wanted to. We were so close, we were so a part of it, and it was definitely really interesting.
That was super fun.
But that makes it, and I think that idea of tribal, and all venues are kind of that way.
Yeah, and some are just make that more accessible. But on the flip side, I think, you know, Paolo Soleri, I remember hearing that it was also like a nightmare for bands to load in and out of that venue. Which I think
that's what we were watching down that ramp was the load in, and we saw people all day bringing the stuff down in. I'll bet it was. I heard rumors it was supposed to be like an ear canal. I mean, I don't know if that's true, but that was, you know, there are all these rumors swirling around about it. And I think too, you know, it's the venue, it's everything. It's your time of life. Like at that time I was a raft guide living this really free life, and there was a payphone in the venue. And I remember we were supposed to maybe come home for the second show. And then the first night happened, and we were like, there's absolutely no way we are leaving. And so we called and just left a message for our boss. And we were like, we aren't coming back, and we're staying at this hotel. You can leave us a message there if you want to. Bye. And that was it. Like no one could get a hold of us. You know, you can text us and tell us to come home. We were like, whatever, we're never coming back.
They need to bring payphones back at venues. Just like back in the day, people would do that at dead shows, pick up the payphone, call someone, then just keep the phone hanging so they can catch some of the music on the phone.
You know, it's so funny these days, like, you know, kids in college won't have these opportunities to totally just, you know, get away from school for a week and a half or two. Like, I remember doing that. That was it was still difficult to keep that a secret, you know. Leaving college, you know, for 3 weeks or whatever. You know, but like now you could never do that. Everything's trackable. But
right.
Your parents would still know where you were.
But when you talk about venues, it's like, I think the other kind of hook for Panic right after the Grateful Dead was that this band was at the time playing bars, like, you know, and college gymnasiums and things. And so after having like seeing shows at like Giant Stadium or RFK, you know, you could go and to any Panic show in the Northeast pretty much in 94, even 95 at Irving Plaza, you could just walk right up right to the stage, you know? Now, obviously, as the show went on, it would be a little more difficult, but not that tough. And definitely in 93, they would come out to the bar and just have drinks,
Do
you know,
shots.
like,
Yeah.
yeah. And it was just, and so that was you did not get that, or I never had that experience with members of the Grateful Dead or, you know, or even being that close. I mean, I did have one like at the Spectrum in Philly, not an intimate venue to say the least, right? But I was there and I guess it was fall 92. No, they didn't do fall 92, fall 93, maybe something, whatever. And it was Hornsby was there, and they did CC Rider, Train to Cry. It was the last one, I think, maybe. And then but I got fourth row. I got like I had no ticket. I was standing there all day looking for a ticket. Yeah. And then all of a sudden I walk into like where no one's at, like around the corner of the venue, and like a guy is running towards the venue. He's obviously late, you know, or something. He's meeting people, but he's like, I have an extra face value. I'm like, sold, you know?
Sign me up.
And then and then I get it. It's fourth row. And I'm like, you know, first I'm like, is this fourth row? You know, you don't like, I'm like, I can't believe it's fourth row. And like, and then, you know, the usher just keeps going and he keeps going.
Yeah.
I'm like, here I am, fourth row. And I was like fully looking at Garcia's eyes, and it is completely uncomfortable and weird, but completely during Morning Dew, you know, and I'm just like, this is it, you know, this is it. This is it. Cause I mean, Morning Dew with Jerry Garcia, fourth row, I'm locked in, you know, and then like, and then I have intimate memories though of going to see Panic in 94 in Rhode Island and getting right up there when he's doing Hold an Oversoul and being like, Jesus, you know, like this guy is so like, I was like, I'm like, this is very impressive. He's just impressive. You know, I was just like, he is just such a real deal musician. And I can't believe these guys are just at this level. I was, that's what I kind of couldn't believe when I was seeing them play night after night, like consistent, super tight performances. They didn't have those fuck ups, I thought, like the Dead would have, you know, and I mean, I love them, but the Dead will have some train wreck. Every now and then I would hear a nice Panic train wreck for some reason at huge shows. Maybe they're nervous, but I remember like a couple of Please disasters, and but not really. Like night in, night out, they deliver really upper level vocal performances and musical performances. I thought that was just kind of unbelievable because so many bands are hit or miss, you know?
Yeah.
Professionals for sure. Yeah, those guys are leaving it all out on the floor every night.
Definitely.
And I feel like now one of the things that I feel like now that things are not the same and we are older and we have cell phones and we have all this trappings of real life and we're real adults, but we're still traveling to see shows. Now it isn't just the show. Like you could go see someone somewhere. Now it's the venue, I think, is starting to be the draw. Like I've seen this band 150 times. I don't want to just go see them anywhere. Oh, they're playing at, you know, the Ryman. Let's go to the Ryman. They're playing at, and they found these new venues. Like, I mean, maybe they're not new, but I feel like they're creating these new rituals at these new venues, like St. Augustine. That has become a place, you know, people are like, they always throw it down when they're at X, Y, and Z. And St. Augustine is one of those places. Or like, you know, anyone who hasn't been to the Chicago Theater, I'm always like, if you haven't been to the Chicago Theater, you need to go there because it's just so beautiful, you know, and the sound is amazing. But it's traveling to see the venues now as much as it is traveling to see the show.
For sure. I think I don't know about you guys, big thing for me, I'm realizing like venues that have general admission seating, I really appreciate that. It's just to be able to hang out with your friends at the show. Just it's such a game changer. And something I'm curious about is like why more venues are not general admission. I'd be curious, like as we talked about on this podcast, and thinking about people to talk to, and just trying to find out from the venue's perspective why certain things happen or don't happen. I would be more curious to find out why more venues do not do general admission seating.
Yeah, I think that's a good point about general admission. I think in general, overall, I feel like we're kind of at a point live music wise. There's like almost a paradigm shift in terms of how, obviously people are consuming live music completely differently now. And so there's certainly a huge draw for the couch touring and the live streaming, and venues. I think that's why some of these historic venues are becoming destinations, and bands and artists are looking for these venues to bring people, give them another reason to come out. And I would think down the road, just, the venues will probably start adopting more of these community types of features, for lack of a better word. Maybe it's not always general admission, maybe there's some sort of group something, maybe, because people are having these parties for New Year's or whatever. It's very easy to do that, and if you want to hang with your friends at a show, I would think venues are going to try to accommodate that going forward. I think, but we'll see. But I think it all ties into that whole experience. And at the end of the day, if they, that this will all be determined on what happens when, if ticket sales are slow and all of that. And I don't know that they are or would be, et cetera. But then you would probably see kind of maybe different attempts to make their venue more destination, more community friendly, to compete with that kind of a couch tour luxury, all those amenities of home. And you do kind of see some of those venues trying to, bring out a lot of these high class amenities and things like that. And I'm sure
like
more of that's coming.
Like the Orion Theater in Alabama. Is that in Alabama, or is that in
Huntsville? Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, that's like the new one. Yeah.
Yeah, it seems like a new venue, which it's refreshing to see, because it seems like in this era of all these venues with names like Home Depot, AT&T, whatever megalith it is, it's refreshing to see this venue that seems like there has been a lot of forethought into it. And I don't know, even with like a name that's a maybe Orion is like some insurance company, I don't know, but it just seems like and it just seems like when there is a venue like that in this day and age with social media and everything, that it immediately just becomes this big thing in the scene, where people immediely know about it and are seeing pictures of the venue and hearing, whoa, this is a place where you want to travel to see a show here. And then inevitably the shows are usually pretty rocking shows at venues where the fans seem to really rally around it, because the bands seems like usually feel the same way about these venues. And so I don't know if there are other venues that you guys have been hearing about kind of like that, but it seems like they put a lot of thought into like all the amount of bathrooms that they have there, and just have tried to. I haven't been there, and I don't know a whole lot about it, but from the little that I have heard.
Well, you were just I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, the Mission in Denver, in Rhino, it's new, and you can tell, it is well thought out. The bathroom scene is great. The bar, you don't have to leave the show to go to the bar. The bars are just right there, and it's so accessible and it's so easy. And everyone I know that's been to the Mission has that, they're definitely taking, 'cause so many of those venues are old, they're older, or they were designed at another time. And I think whoever designed the mission listened. And that would be, I would love to talk to the people who went into that. Like, how did you gather your information to create this venue? Who did you talk to? Was it just your experience? But it is it's not a fancy venue. It doesn't feel, there's, the aesthetic is very simple. There's the big disco ball, but other than that, the aesthetic is simple. It feels kind of modern, but it's just such a logistically easy place once you're inside.
Nice. And the sound is supposed to be really good from what I hear.
Sound is great, and there's not a bad seat in that house. I mean, literally, I know a lot of places say that, but if I'm seeing a show at the Mission, I don't feel stressed out. Like I have to get there, because if not, I'm going to end up and not being able to see anything. You really could be just about anywhere in that venue and have a great experience. I think they are. I don't know I haven't seen pictures. I remember because Panic was the first band at Orion, right?
I believe so.
Yeah, and I remember hearing about it. You know what I'm interested in? You were saying about why aren't more venues GA? I am curious because I've seen different bands at different venues and they have different policies. So like I saw Billy Strings at First Bank in Broomfield, Colorado,
which is
in February.
Down.
It's closing down.
Yeah, I heard that last night, which was not to hijack the conversation, but hearing about the Mission Ballroom and all that, where I wonder, if that's part of it is I know they're different size venues, but maybe there's a lot more shows going to the Mission these days. I don't know about the whole, the contracts aspect of it, but it could be tied into that, where just bands are loving playing there, people are loving going to places like the Mission, where maybe the first bank venue is just not as enticing to bands and fans right now. But
that's really interesting, because to me, the major flaw of First Bank is its location. It's in Broomfield. I mean, we rented an Airbnb to go to Billy, and it was like we were literally in a neighborhood. People were taking out their trash and their kids were playing basketball across the street. There's nowhere, unless you're at the A-Loft, there is absolutely nowhere really cool to hang out. There's some condos, I'll bet there's some Airbnbs there, but it's a cool venue though. I'm sad to hear that. It seems like it's a little bit bigger than the Mission. I don't know exactly what their stats are as far as, how many people they can fit, but it's a cool venue. It's set up well. I've seen a lot of shows there now, and I really have learned to appreciate it and love it. I'm sad to hear that it's not going to be there.
Well, to answer your question, to find out the capacity, you can go to this new website, venuellama.com.
If only I knew a place to find that out. But Billy was seated. So you had the floor and then you had seats. But when I've seen Panic there, it's GA. And I saw Ween there. I believe Ween, that was a long time ago, but we had floor, but I think it was just GA in the seats too. So who makes those decisions? And that's really interesting to me. And that's something with Venue Llama that I would love to explore, because Red Rocks has different policies. Does the band get to make those choices? Who gets the say there? Do they have a menu of options? You can let your fans bring in a cooler full of ice. You can let your fans bring these things in. Do you want to do that? Or does the venue say, nope, you guys have a bad reputation, you don't get to do this?
Yeah, that's a great question. I know too, I was thinking about it. I was recently seeing Phish at the Greek Theater, which is, I'm not sure if all shows there are general admission. I would think so, just based on what the seating is like. But that maybe one thing with it being general admission, you had to line up super early. I mean, people.
Yeah.
I mean, I got there at 1:00 for a 7:00 show, or somewhere around there. But anyway, the line was huge. I was super far back in the line, even getting there at 1:00. So I guess that is one thing as far as general admission. Maybe venues just don't want people lining up super early or whatever town they're in, maybe that there's, you know, some reasons why. Yeah, and from a fan perspective, like I love, like I said, I do love GA shows, but it also, you know, I was in Berkeley, it would have been nice to have had time to explore Berkeley and San Fran a little bit rather than, well, the line was fun, you know, it's not ideal for everybody to get in line at 1 o'clock or, you know, earlier for
That's
a lot of
tough.
people too.
Yeah, I've been to some shows where friends of mine have done that.
Yeah.
Specifically, I remember UNO specifically. I remember people lining up at Halloween for that.
Yeah.
And then I remember seeing like, all right, see you tonight, you know, like, but they were, I mean, they were okay to do it. They weren't like, hey, I'm psyched to wait online, but they were.
Yeah.
They
Yeah. It's
were
a special
okay.
breed of person. Yeah. We have a
Yeah.
friend that every Red Rocks or every show, really, he gets there at 6 a.m. and
Yeah.
every, you know, the whole run. And it's great to have a friend like that. And you want to do your part, but it seems like some people just have, you know, like some people just want to be pilots. Some people want to wait in line at 6 a.m. But
Yeah.
you'll meet all sorts
Yeah.
of cool folks. So you probably see it every show, and you know, you probably have your little poster buying subculture of friends too.
Yeah, I think for him, it's just as much the poster, getting in line for the poster, it's getting in line for all of it. But it's, yeah, some people want to get in line early. And I feel like, even though I love GA shows, like you were saying, you wished more shows were GA, when a show is seated, I feel like there's benefits to both. I have stopped wishing it for one or the other, because when it's seated, you kind of just accept your fate. Like, I have good
Right.
seats, I have these seats, whatever. And then it becomes the push to get the better seats at the beginning, whatever you could do to try to like log in early or get pre-sale, or I don't know how people get the magic seats and how they don't, but you know, it gives you can go out to dinner, you could go like eat before the show. You don't have to get to the lot so early. So
it's kind of like flying Southwest versus American. Like you can go buy that magazine that you're wanting, and
you don't have to get in the A line.
Right.
I know, if you're flying to a show and you're flying Southwest and it's a GA show, you might just spend your entire weekend waiting in line for things. Like, oh, I got to be first. I want that exit row.
Yeah, absolutely. You're cutting out a little bit. Didn't catch your last.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I just said if you fly Southwest to a show, you could spend your entire time waiting. It's the plane. There's a line at the plane. There's a line at the show. The line at the restaurant. The line at the bathroom.
For sure. Brian, just getting back, I was just curious, like earlier when you were talking about just going like an hour back in the conversation, but when you moved out to Atlanta, like to get immersed in the Panic scene, how did you make that happen as far as like, you know, becoming Panic's first webmaster? How did that?
Well, I can't even believe how long this has been. It's so wild. So like, I was doing websites, right? And I was very intrigued by the whole web thing by 1995. And I was like, I got to figure out how to do this stuff. This is really cool. It's just right up my alley. So I started just messing around building websites, and like quickly I was like doing websites for like dad's partners, things like that, you know, wherever I could get business. And to like practice literally as a coder, I would do like projects of mine, stuff that I was interested in. I was like, 22, 23. So I was interested in like Widespread Panic, BMX, like that's what I was interested in, Grateful Dead. And so I did sites, tape trading, like all of those interests became pet projects of mine. And one of those sites was The Sandbox, which was a tape trading site just for Panic fans. And so again, this is before digital, before even there were CDs, I guess, just coming around. The burning was starting, but it was still that send me your list of tapes and then pick one out, and I'll send you that. You send me blanks, or I'll send you the show. You know, you trade tapes, and that's how I amassed my collection. I remember, like, you know, because I was doing this rapidly through like Dupree's Diamond News and Relics magazine. They would have classifieds, and I was sending snail mails and getting people's tape lists and sending out mine and doing it that way. And then when the internet came, I was like, send me your tape lists, I'll post them online, and then you could email each other and set up trades. And that's how it started. And then, like, we started hosting all these lists for, you know, Panic fans. And then we had little sections, you know, like I would play audio clips of JB, you know, talking or saying something, you know, and I'd be like, name the show, like just really like real fan stuff, you know, in 96. And so, and then schools sent me an email. And like, again, at this time, there's no way to reach out to these guys. There's no Twitter. You know, so like I get an email, an AOL email from Dave Schools, and he said it was just a nice email saying, kudos to what you've created. It doesn't duplicate any other fan stuff. Thank you for the support, that kind of a thing. And I was like, that's awesome, nice. And then at that time, there were these other guys developing this magazine called An Honest Tune magazine, which was like, I think the Southern Journal of Jam, and it was like a Relics, but focused on the Southeastern music scene, with Panic playing the role of the Grateful Dead, you know, like, you know, in Relics world. And they needed a website, and so I did their website, and Panic was totally down with this magazine concept, right? It was like, they were so humbled and blown away. And they were like, yeah, whatever. And they were like really supportive of that whole project. So much so that Mikey wore an Honest Tune t-shirt on his Conan appearance when they did Avis.
Oh, wow.
It's tough to find that clip. I mean, maybe not anymore, but I remember having a tough time finding it. But I think it's during it. It could be during Travel. I think it's Avis, because he just nails the solo. And I'm like, I remember watching, I'm pretty sure it's Avis, but it could have been T-Light. Anyway, so then I had sent an email to the merchandise people at Panic, and I just said to him, it was just Richard, this guy Richard at the time. And you guys know, you know the song Greta, right? There was also, there's a Greta.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, sorry. So, so at the time it was just Richard, but I was like, hey, can I sell some? I think that's what I said. I was like, can I sell some of your merch on the Sandbox? Because I think I could sell some. And he's like, what traffic, you know, like we started this very, you know, primitive digital metrics conversation about analytics, you know, it was so funny. How many hits are you getting? Whatever. So in any case, he was like, I'd be very interested in doing something like that. And then that kind of petered out, but he let me put stickers. He would take stickers and let me put them on the merch table. So like, he's like, anything that would bring people to the table. It's great. So I was like, you can just give them away. I don't give a shit, you know, just give them away.
Yeah.
So I had like these old like it was a total, again, before trademark and copyright stuff was really, I mean, I never would have done this today, but I did. Like, my whole site was like Charlie Brown images all over the place, you know, mixed in with Widespread Panic. And the sticker was Charlie Brown, like in a sandbox, you know, with Snoopy and whatever. And so he gave those away. But, and so that was all that happened with the merch. And then months later, after I moved to Atlanta, I went to the Backyard shows in 97, and there was a guy, there was this dude named Mr. B. He was all over Spreadnet in the mid 90s. Mr. B. He was an old cat who was a fan from the late 80s, who had seen them at the wetlands and stuff, you know, like so he'd been around. And at that time, it was very easy to access those guys because they were like loading in themselves, them and Gomer driving to the shows or whatever. And he was so funny. He just walks us backstage. He didn't have a pass. 7 of us didn't have a pass, but he just like just a total pro, you know. We were like, again, I was 24 and he was probably 50 and or 45, and he just like barreled on through very nicely. He was really nice, and just he took us right back. It was me, maybe a guy named D Gold, and
is this
Tom
in Austin or
Speed.
Atlanta?
This is Austin. Sorry, this is Austin at the
Okay, yeah.
backyard. And he walks us right into the green room, and it was like Mr. B, 6 kids, and then all of a sudden Dave Schools comes in, right? And it couldn't have been more accessible. It was just there to talk to us all. It was a very nice, chill conversation. Mr. B goes around the horn and introduces all of us. It was like as if it were some sort of business meeting. It was really nice. And then he's like, "This is Daniel Cole," and he's like, "Oh, I know you, Daniel." Like and then he goes into this Brian Sofer, and he's like, "Nice design." And I was like, "Thank you," you know. And so he's like, he goes, "Do me a favor and send me a proposal. We'll see if we can get, you know, we'd like to have you do some stuff." And so that's how it happened. And then like before I could do that, Mary, I think, reached out to me and said, "Are you going to be at Mud Island?" Or maybe it was after I sent up something, and then she said, "Are you going to be at Mud Island?" I said, "Yes." And then we met there, and then she set up a meeting at Brown Cat, and then that was wild. So they were just like, it wasn't even like, usually meetings, when I do meetings to develop or whatever, it's a long process and back and forth and what ifs and blah, 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 and like it was just like, the meeting was me, Dave, Mary, Sam Lanier, and it was just, they were just the most down to earth, the most, people say it all the time, but they were like the most regular, completely ridiculous. Right. It was just totally normal. And then I was like, I was nervous because I was so little, you know, I was young. And then I was like, and I just need a deposit to get started. And he's like, "I'll just write you the whole thing right now." And I was like, "Oh, that's fine. That works."
Do that too.
But none of this was, it was never about any money. Like I didn't give a fuck. I was like, I get to do this site. Let me do it. And so then I remember I just went home and like just started doing stuff immediately, you know, and it was very, it was cool. And but that's how I was just like, I was just the guy doing websites for them at the right time. Like they just needed somebody to do it. They were lucky to have a fan, you know. And it's funny because even whatever web project I'm doing ever, I always say, like, you always, if you can have your target audience be the creator, I mean, or the developer, you're head and shoulders above. Like it's just a really nice thing when that happens. So it just kind of worked out, and they couldn't have been better. And like, you know, they spoiled me rotten. Cool. Like they were the best.
Well, and you got in kind of early. It feels like if you were doing websites, would you say like 92? That would have been early. You said 95?
95.
I feel like I wasn't even looking at websites at 95. If you were building websites in 95, like nowadays, anyone can build a website. It's like whatever. But in those days, that was a hot commodity to have that knowledge and to have that those technical skills. So, you know, you were ahead of the game, it feels like.
It was just, but it was just because I thought it was cool. Like, you know, someone showed me America Online. I was like, how do you even do this? And then because they were talking about like the World Wide Web is coming. I was like, well, what's that? You know? That's the thing. And so like before then, like even on America Online, they had these panic forums called something. In the end, ABC had a rock and roll music forum. Right. This was pre-SpreadNet or something, or something like that. And I remember downloading and I never had seen JV. Right. And I remember, I'd seen him. I'd never seen pictures. I'd seen him here and there live at like, you know, 2 shows or something. But like you could download these pictures. It would take forever to download, you know, all that. But no, it was definitely starting. And it was right place, right time. They had somebody doing stuff, but they didn't know what to do. A lot of people didn't know what to do with the website, you know, myself included, you know, and we must have done like, we made so many different versions of that website. We just kept doing stuff. And I was like, we need a definitely a tour dates. We need merch.
Yeah.
We need like, let's learn about the band. Nobody knows anything about this band, and so like we kind of hashed out what we wanted to talk about, and then but it was all about tour dates, and it was all about like, yeah, it's just cool.
I love that website, and it had that feeling of a fan, someone, who was. It seemed like the website was somebody who was also designing like lot shirts. It just had that really homegrown feel to it. Yeah, I would love to, if you have any photos of the old homepage, it'd be awesome to see that. What was the level of what was the level of interaction like from the band? Like, did they have much say about what they wanted, the content that they wanted to see on the site, or like, did you have to run anything by JD?
So no, so I never did any, like there was no running by of anything other than with me talking to Mary, who was the best in terms of everything, like just gives you all the stuff that you need instantly, like just a pleasure. But and very supportive, and they were just happy that everything was happening, like that things were current, and but there was, the only thing that I had heard was that they were because I was like, I need pictures, we need pictures, we don't have any pictures, so, and then God, one day I got like a FedEx, like it was like a document drop, right? Like boom, all these pictures. In those days, I had to scan them in, pictures from all the photographers you've probably seen, like Tom Smith, Michael Sheehan, all those names, Jackie Jasper, and like to go in and scan them. Anyway, that was what I was told was the biggest hindrance, was getting those guys to approve their own press photos. Yeah.
I guess I have this vision, if you're the webmaster for the band, I picture you like having cocktails together and like doing things together. But I guess it's just, I remember Jordan telling us back in the day, like, yeah, my buddy from high school, he's the webmaster for the band. And we were like, oh my gosh, that sounds so luxurious and, important.
I was just another behind the scenes dude in the office, Now they treated me amazing. So like they were and they would let me, they comp me for any show I wanted to go. They were fantastic about that. And so what was really cool from a venue perspective though is for some reasons and some occasions, some shows, they would give me a working pass to avoid a comp ticket, It's easier to handle it, I guess, in some way. So I'd have to go in the crew work entrance, and that was pretty awesome. So like, I at the time, I'd been to all these different stadiums and arenas with the Grateful Dead and stuff like that. And now Panic was hitting their stride in like 97, 98, starting to play bigger, venues, bigger amphitheaters, especially down south. So I was able to go to these, enter these venues through the backstage and hang out in the back and do all access, just do whatever. And that was really interesting. But it wasn't like, I would, to be honest, I would go back to like use the restroom, really. Like I wasn't hanging out. I wasn't the kind of guy who could like sit there and talk to JB and stuff after the show. It's not my thing, but there were many times, honestly, where there were those things where it just kind of happened, where I'd be sitting at a table and he would just come and sit down next to me, not because he knew it was me, just because he just sat down next to me and he was like wiped out, and we just start talking like two people. I mean, he did know who I was, but I was never a star fucker about that. And that's why I cut off passes with a lot of people for a lot of different reasons, behavioral and whatnot. But like, I just tried to just be like cool, and I didn't hang out that much back there, and I didn't try to bring all my friends, and like that was a problem. Some of the people were like, oh, and can I have another sticker? And and it was just like, just never ask for anything except for like the shows I'm going to. And tried to just whatever, but they're the best. They're like the best. I think everyone who works with them will say that, despite like a lot of online stuff through the years, brown cat this, brown cat that, whatever, maybe, I don't know, but the nicest people in the world.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. Cool. Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. It's cool to hear.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, and talking
Lisa,
about this, there's so many possibilities for, like, we've brought up so many venues that aren't around anymore. I think that could be a really fun thing is you know, you can't review a venue that doesn't exist anymore, but you can remember it. And people, I think,
Yeah.
I love thinking about Paolo Soleri, you know, and even Irvine Meadows. Like, we had a venue here called State Bridge that was awesome. It was right on the Colorado River. You could like float in on a raft, and you know, they got some kind of bigger, but just anyway, we all have those venues that aren't around anymore that you're like, man, that was the good, like the backyard. You brought up the backyard, like no more backyard.
Yep.
That's
You know,
that's a fun thing to think about.
for sure.
Yeah, I
think
mean,
we
there's
should-
an old Navy there, though. I mean, that's pretty awesome too.
An old Navy there where the backyard was.
Or maybe it's Bed Bath and Beyond, or both.
Oh
probably.
yeah, good. I, you know, pick up some pillow shams, maybe scented lotion.
we should definitely do a venue flashback feature. That would be sick. I think there's just
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
many, you know.
There's so many.
There are.
And you
Yeah.
could get people who are, you know, we have our era of venues that we remember, you know, but then going back, I'm sure, you know, who was at CBGB? Raise your hand. Like, you know, I'd love to hear those stories too.
Definitely.
And Lisa, so Lisa, you have your own radio show. Is that right?
It is correct. Yes, I do have my own radio show. It's on KHEN, KHENLP 106.9 in Salida, Colorado. We're a community radio station. We have, it's 100 watt, so we're a low powered license through the FCC, which is a whole nother story that's very interesting, but I won't tell you now. But streaming, you know, like everything else on the World Wide Web that Brian heard about back in the day, it's happening and you can stream us.
How long have you been doing that for now?
It's 10 years now that I've been.
10 years. Wow.
Yeah, it'll be 10 years in like November.
That's awesome. Nice.
It's crazy. Yeah.
That's super, super cool. Okay, I've been meaning to ask you this. People ask me about your show. And can you track your listenership? Like, can you see how many people are listening to your show?
No, I can't. I think there's a way that they can track the streaming for sure.
Mhm.
I don't know. I never ask. It feels like, honestly, when you're doing a radio show, or at least for me, and I've heard this from some of the other DJs, you kind of feel like there's 3 people out there. You know, I don't know who's listening, and around town, people will come up to me and be like, "Hey, I was listening to your show the other night. You know, I really like that song." And you're kind of like, "Oh, you were listening. Oh, that's great." You know? But it's always sort of a surprise to hear that people are listening, because it's, you know, here we're talking to each other, and you know, I can see you guys, but when you're on the radio, you're just pretty much by yourself, and
Is that
you know,
hard
people
to
are
kind of, is that tricky? Because like in a conversation like this, you can see reactions and, you know, hear reactions and stuff like that. Is it like not having anything to kind of like bounce off of, so to speak? Is that tricky, or does it make it easier in a sense?
You know, it is what it is. It's fine. I mean, I think if you were someone who, it's like you're kind of talking to yourself, but you're talking to the imagined people that might be out there. If I know someone is listening that night, I will sometimes not play a song that I know they don't like. Like, we have a friend at Hefe, not Chicago, Hefe here. There would be times where he'd be listening and be like, "Oh, I'm not going to play that song," because he's like kind of a hater. You know, when you get the haters listening, you got to please them. But then, you know, we have friends who we have a friend who famously does not like the Beatles. So if I know he's listening, I always try to find a really good Beatles song and play it. And I'm just waiting for the time that he's like, "Man, I decided that I like the Beatles because you played The Word, and I didn't know The Word was such a good song." So it does impact that. It's fun. It kind of doesn't matter if someone's listening. Honestly, what I love about the show isn't that I like that other people are listening, but I just love music, and I love thinking about music, and it gives me a reason to do that. And it's real fun.